As you know, this entire channel could become the Scott Jennings fan account. He continues to do a great job, and he had a great day yesterday pushing back on lie after lie after lie on CNN panels. I mean, look at the chyron right there. Trump, I don't know if I need to uphold the Constitution. Remember, I've told you this trick in the past. Whenever you see something pulled out in either a chyron like that, or in a headline or in an article, and only 2 or 3 words are in quotation marks and the rest is just filled in. What that means is the only actual direct quote of what Trump said was, I don't know. So Trump did not say, I don't know if I need to uphold the Constitution. What did he really say? Well, we'll start with Scott Jennings pushing back on the screaming memes on the panel, and then we'll show you what he really said. Buckle up, get ready. I know it's a shock. The media is lying about Donald Trump again. It's very fine people all over again. Let's watch.
We have been invaded by millions upon millions of people, and he was elected to get them out. He was elected to get them out. And what some people are proposing is a backlog system that will never allow us to go to get them out.
You're describing illegal immigration, which has been around for a long time as an invasion, which is fine for you if you want to do that. But why is that unusual that there's a process to go through to deport people? I mean, that's actually just how the system works.
Do you know how long it takes for this process, this paperwork to get people out? The guy that we've all been weeping and gnashing teeth over, the guy we sent to El Salvador, was in the country 14 years illegally.
But what about what
we've
Dante's,
got millions of people who have gamed this system,
what
and
about
now
what
we're going to
Dante-
give it
Either
to
you
them.
believe in the Constitution or you don't. And
I believe in the sovereignty of the United States, or you don't.
But
So you don't believe in the
believe in the Constitution?
I believe in the sovereignty of the United
So you
States,
don't
and I
believe
believe
in the
we've
And
been
you don't
invaded.
believe that Donald Trump should abide by the Constitution?
Just a serious question.
Of course I do. And of course I believe.
Do you believe that he does?
And I believe that he will follow, just as he said, what the Supreme Court says. But the policy debate is worth
From
having.
the very beginning,
Millions
Trump,
upon millions of people are
Trump
here, and they will not
campaigning,
leave. And he has to get them
always.
All right. Now, unlike Joe Biden, of course, Donald Trump has followed every single decision that the Supreme Court has handed down in his first term as president and continuing on. Can't say that about Joe Biden, by the way. But let's take this head on here. The viewers of this channel who saw our great interview with the immigration lawyer last week, if you like that, give us a thumbs up. Did you love that interview last week with Judge Arthur? Give us a thumbs up on that. And if you didn't see it, go ahead and look on our channel. It's just a couple of days ago. You actually know more about the actual process due a illegal immigrant than anybody sitting on that panel right there. Okay, because he explained exactly what due process is. He was literally an immigration judge. He also helped write immigration and deportation laws. All right, so everybody who watched that hour-long video last week, you're smarter than every single person on that CNN panel, except for Scott Jennings. But let's get to the lie here. I don't know if I need to uphold the Constitution. It comes from this interview with Meet the Press, Kristen Welker, and here's the full context of what Donald Trump said.
Your Secretary of State says everyone who's here, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Do you agree, Mr. President?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
Well, the Fifth Amendment says
I don't know. It seems it might say that, but if you're talking about that, then we'd have to have 1 million or 2 million or 3 million trials. We have thousands of people that are some murderers and some drug dealers and some of the worst people on earth. But some of the worst, most dangerous people on earth. And I was elected to get them the hell out of here, and the courts are holding me from doing it.
But even given those numbers that you're talking about, don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know. I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said. What you said is not what I heard the Supreme Court said. They have a different interpretation.
Is anyone in your administration right now in contact with El Salvador about returning Abrego Garcia to the United States?
You're just obsessed with that guy, but you just heard it there. You just heard it there. We're going to follow the Constitution. We'll follow we'll follow the Supreme Court's decision, and we have. But the Supreme Court has not said that we can't deport these people. So when he said, "I don't know," he was actually responding to, "I don't know if what she's saying is correct here." It's not, "I don't know if I have to uphold the Constitution." What he's saying is that she is not clear. I don't know if you're actually understanding what the Constitution says about people who are in the country illegally. Here's the thing. If somebody crosses the border illegally and they're apprehended by Border Patrol and they're here in the United States of America, the Border Patrol can turn them around and send them right back across the border where they came from and put them back into the country they came from, whether it's Canada or Mexico. Do you know what that is? That's due process. But these people suggest that if you do that, you're violating the Constitution. Of course you're not. Of course you're not. Kristen Welker, I have a question for you. Is it constitutional for the President of the United States to enforce our borders and to deport people who are in the country illegally, especially if they're deemed a member of a terrorist organization? The answer is yes. That is 1,000% constitutional, and that's what he's done in the case of Abrego Garcia. But I guess what these people really want is for Donald Trump to handle illegal immigration and deportations the way his predecessors did. You know, like Bill Clinton.
Talking roughly 20 million or so who broke the law, and there was no enforcement of the law from the Biden administration, which presented an even bigger issue because they were able to come here illegally without any issues at all. Bill Clinton deported 12.1 million during his presidency. 92 to 93% of those people he deported were sent back without a formal proceeding, aka due process.
All right. Did you hear that? I'll play it again if you didn't. 12 million deported during the 8 years when Bill Clinton, he was hardly a hawk on the border. 12 million deported during Bill Clinton's 8 years as president. 92% of them did not have a formal hearing. That is the process due somebody who's in this country illegally, especially if they've been apprehended for criminal behavior or consorting with criminals. That is the due process. See, this is why this entire muddled conversation is happening in this country, because people, frankly, aren't educated enough to know that due process means the process that is due an individual based on their individual circumstances. You, as a natural-born citizen of the United States, have different due process or processes due you than does someone who just crossed the country illegally, or somebody who crossed the country illegally 10 years ago and has been caught as a gang member. You don't get the same due process. You don't get appeal after appeal after appeal. You don't. You get the process that is due to you. So, of all of the 12 million that Bill Clinton deported, how many were sent home in this way?
Clinton deported 12.1 million during his presidency. 92 to 93% of those people he deported were sent back without a formal proceeding, aka due process. Okay. So look, to what President Trump said, 5 million trials. That's impossible. You can't do it. And the fact that these judges continue to get in the way and try to derail his deportation efforts, it's brutal because, you know, to Caroline's points earlier, the Manhattan Institute estimates an average net fiscal burden of $68,000 per illegal migrant, which actually goes up to $130,000 for those with lower education levels.
That's right. And add that the multiple members of the family, and then spread that over the average number of years they stay here, which is like 4 to 7 years. And that's where you get your $1 million that Stephen Miller was talking about. That's the reality of this. But the lies continue. The lies continue. The I don't know if I need to uphold the Constitution lie continues. It's just like very fine people. It's just like there's going to be a bloodbath if I'm not elected. They just continue to lie over and over again. The difference is they don't count on us being able to explain to you the truth. More from Jennings here.
First, did Joe Biden, when he said he would faithfully uphold and execute the laws of this land, not mean it when he decided to let millions upon millions of people into the country? Because he did not execute the laws.
I thought that you were going to squirm out of that question.
I'm not squirming.
Yes, you did. And that's why I prepared for it, because I want to read you something. At the core of Trump's candidacy is a call for greater executive authority with willful disregard for the constitutional limits placed on our chief executive. Trump especially promises to force individual companies to do things he wants them to do, or else he promises punishment to those who displease him, which appeals to the miserable man at the airport bar. Do you recognize that?
Yeah, I wrote it.
Exactly.
And here's
so
the deal.
what he hasn't
And
changed.
here's
So
the
what has changed about you?
And here's the difference between then and now. This country has been invaded. The president was elected.
So
to
you
end the
changed your
invasion.
opinion on the Constitution?
My opinion is the president needs to pull every lever he can to solve illegal
So
immigration.
you've answered that question by saying
here's
you
the
don't
question.
mind him being unconstitutional.
that every immigrant here is the same. You can't believe that because
Yes.
they're not. They're not.
I do.
There's some
I
good,
believe
there's
every-
some bad. There's some criminal,
I
they're
believe,
not.
I believe
And how
everybody
do you-
who's here
but
illegally
hear
is
this
here
out.
illegally.
How do
Not
you
all are
differentiate?
violent, but all are here
But
illegally.
how do you differentiate if nobody gets a hearing, if you don't have due process? How do you distinguish one from the other?
Well,
So what you're saying is every person that's here in this country is a criminal, is a gang member,
No.
should be thrown in jail.
Every person who's
That's
here
what's
illegally,
happening.
every person who is here illegally is in fact a criminal. Some of them do come here and commit violent crimes
Some of
and
them,
still
but how do you
aren't
differentiate
deported.
if you don't have a
Well,
process?
some have records and some don't.
But they
I'm
still
here to
have
break the news.
constitutional rights.
They're
Hold
all
on,
going
hold on a
away.
They still
second.
have constitutional
I want to make
rights.
sure that
Every single person who came here illegally is in fact a criminal, and the fact that that is not logical to half of the people on that panel is mind-numbing. Jennings was just getting started, though. They actually ended up changing the subject at one point, finally, beyond just a constitutional due process, because all of them should watch our interview from last week with Judge Arthur. Here we go, talking about Trump's desire to open Alcatraz. It got even better.
The things that animate him about what he really gets excited about. It is about branding. It is about imagery. It is about kind of this nationalism. The fact that they're going to consider, or probably, I guess now, really have this military parade. We don't need a military parade. We don't need to spend millions or maybe hundreds of millions of dollars to do that. But we want to do it because he has to feed
I mean,
his
he said it
inner
himself.
image monster.
What's wrong with the
he
parade?
said it himself. He wants maybe he
Are you guys
thinks of
against the
himself as a
military
movie
parade?
maker.
Love the military.
Well,
$100 million, Phil?
cannot-
$100 million on it?
cutting,
I don't think it's called
you cannot be
$100
cutting tens of thousands of federal workers at the same time you say we're going to waste money on a military parade.
Why is
And
it
we do
wasted?
It is wasteful.
Why?
It is what do we need to
Well,
show
what's
off
the
our
purpose?
military for? But that's strongmen do.
military.
Strongmen do that. It has nothing to do with pride in the military. Strongmen do that because they want to make their citizens cower. They want to say, we are strong. I am here. I have all these weapons. Aren't you proud of me? We don't need to do that. We know that our military is, multiples the size of anybody else's military on the planet. We don't need them to bring the missiles down Pennsylvania Avenue in order for us to know that.
It's not about the size. In the last 4 years,
It's
morale in the
about
military
size.
was down, recruitment was down. There is a concerted effort going on right now at the Pentagon, and it's already successful to enhance recruitment and to enhance pride and the idea of joining the military. I think you all are
Yes, a missile on
discounting
Pennsylvania Avenue is gonna
the
make
idea
people
that
run out
a
and join the
national
military.
parade for our military to show off our military, to show pride in the veterans that have defended this country, and you all are mad
Pride
about
in the
it.
veterans. He was just trying to rename Veterans Day.
I'm super
Jamal.
proud of our military, but I don't think we should waste money. I think that the worst thing for morale that I've seen is Pete Hegseth as the defense
That's the worst thing
secretary.
you've seen.
For morale?
The literal worst thing you've
I
seen.
think pretty much. I mean, it's embarrassing. If you want to embarrass
Talk to
people,
a rank and
You
file
know
military
what's
person. They'll tell
interesting?
you
I
the
mean,
wet
look,
blanket is off.
Yeah, dude, you had me at Jimmy Carter's grandson. I love that. That's his claim to fame. That hey, what do you want as your title? What's your job? What's your profession? What's your expertise? Well, I'm Jimmy Carter's grandson. Done. By the way, lost in this entire conversation is that the military parade scheduled for June 14th here in Washington, D.C. is also the 250th birthday of the United States Army. That's right. It's a year older than our nation itself. It was when George Washington was commissioned to put together a Continental Army to fight against the British. And they won. And the U.S. Army deserves something after all, don't they? All right. And then we move on to the Alcatraz conversation.
The idea of reopening a prison that's been closed for many, many decades because it just doesn't make sense to house people there. Why?
Well, does it? I don't know. He said he was going to study it. I mean, we have a prison overcrowding problem. You've been fussing about recently him sending American criminals overseas to their prisons. Don't we need more prisons in the United States? What's wrong, what's wrong with it?
Okay. Well, okay.
I mean, what's the matter?
All right, let's.
Honestly, and again, the greatest superpower that Scott Jennings has is that he turns their own arguments on them against them and uses truth and facts that are completely impervious to their illogical brains. And look at that panel too. What a dinner party that is. There's no wonder that Abby Phillips is tanking in the ratings right now. I think she's in the cellar or second to the cellar right now of the major cable networks, even with Scott Jennings. Imagine if Jennings weren't there. Imagine if he weren't the only reason to tune into that show or to that channel. It can't last very long. In fact, it shouldn't last very long because people aren't really watching that show for Scott Jennings. They're watching this show for Scott Jennings. So don't tune in to CNN. Just tune in here tomorrow, the next day, to see what he had to say. I commend you again. If you want clarity on due process for illegal immigrants, people in this country, the actual process of deportation, what immigration judges do, and how these laws were all enacted and how they should be carried out properly and how their due process is very different than an American citizen's due process, please watch the video of our interview from last week. I'm sure that at some point here, Kevin will put a link to that interview down in the show notes here.